this episode, Austen interviews Conor's dad, J. Michael Sullivan, about the experience of raising Conor, whether that involved Conor getting kicked out of summer camp or dealing yerba mate out of his campus dorm. Mr. Sullivan shares some thoughts on dedication in the face of difficulty and having faith in your kids. This is Radio Free Zion.
I want to talk to your dad about what it was like raising Conor White Sullivan, man.
That'd be fun. All right. You want to take over, Dad? Well, it was a process. Because Conor was our first one. So we had no ideas of preconceptions of what raising a child was going to be like. Conor was our first one, and
yeah, let's go back to the beginning.
Oh, you mean like the beginning? Like when I was born? I was born. Or maybe the question is, why did we have Conor? So I met Claire, my wife, in Ireland when I was basically a vagabond floating around Ireland, and I'd gotten a job in an architecture office in Cork. And
are you from the States?
Yeah,
okay.
Yeah. I dropped out of school.
Okay.
And I had a little bit of money, and I went over to Europe with a bicycle.
Awesome.
And a sketchbook, and ended up in Ireland because I have family in Ireland. My grandmother was born in Ireland, so I was going to visit my distant cousins. And so I met Claire through a guy who was working in the architecture office with me, and it didn't take long for me to say, "Get rid of your other boyfriends," because I think this is for real. And part of it was understanding that I had met somebody who I really wanted to have kids with.
Okay.
And because I could see that she was going to be an awesome mother. So this is probably the second or third date we had.
Mm-hmm.
And fortunately, things worked out to the point because I came back to the States early. We had a letter writing romance for 6 months.
Okay.
And fortunately, she was able to come over here, and we got married. There are lots of wonderful stories about that. And then after 7 years, pretty much Claire would say I really wanted kids, and I would say that I didn't really push it, but she got pregnant with Conor. And so, like I said before, Conor was our first one. And he was a great baby, He was great.
Up until then, it was fine.
Well, no, he was a great kid. He didn't really start giving us trouble, and he never really gave us bad trouble. I mean, I had to pull him out of the police station, a couple of times, and he went through particular phases of just being bizarre.
Mm-hmm. Tell me about Conor's bizarre phases.
Well, I guess the first one I can think of right now is when he started, dyeing his hair different colors.
Mm-hmm.
And that's not really bizarre for a teenager. You've seen, but that it was getting kind of new at the time.
Mm-hmm.
But, the funny story is taking him to an Irish-American family reunion, and he shows up and he's got sort of like this bunch of yellow hair coming out of his side. And these very conservative Irish-American cousins of mine are coming up to me and say, like, "How can you let him do that?" And it was like, and they're idiots, right? I mean, they just don't understand that this. I found it incredibly interesting.
Sure. Was Conor given a lot of autonomy relative to, or was he just normal teenager in most ways?
He was. There were a lot of abnormalities about Conor as a teenager. Partly he didn't grow like he wanted to grow,
mm-hmm.
and he was really, he was really small, and both in stature and in body mass, and that had a great effect on him. And he could probably talk to you more about that than I could, but he turned it into an amazing, wonderful experience when he finally got to high school because he went on the wrestling team. I can tell you this story.
You can tell that story.
He was light, right? He
112
goes out for
Oh
the wrestling.
wow, you're really small.
I wrestled at 112.
112.
Yeah.
I have, at that time, I still really, right now, no idea what wrestling's about.
Sure. How tall were you? 112 is like
He was small,
Yeah. Like 5'6" maybe.
five. Yeah, that's how tall I am. So I get it.
and he was shorter than you at that
Maybe
time.
5'5".
Sure.
Yeah,
And I am not 112 pounds. I'll tell you that right now.
And he was also like a 13 or 14-year-old kid, never wrestled anything in his life. He'd wanted to go to boxing classes, and we had tried to find places to go boxing, and it never really worked out. So when he went to high school, the first thing he started was he joined the football team, and that freaked me out because he was so small, and I was a football player, and to this day, I don't think football should be played by teenage, 12 or 13 or 14-year-old people.
Because head trauma or
knees
Sure.
primarily. I mean, head trauma is definitely important, but when you're young,
You're not fully developed yet, and
your head can probably sustain a couple of concussions, I guess,
sure.
but your knees can't. So you blow your knee out and you're going to be traumatized. That's another story about my other son. He had his knee blown out. Unfortunately, he went okay. Anyways, Conor goes off the football team, and I have this vision of coming to the football field, and he wasn't good because he was so small, and he was a freshman, but the coach put him on the kickoff team, and I saw him line up against this Gloucester team of mammoth human beings. And I thought, oh my God, this is not going to work. This cannot work. And fortunately, the coach didn't really let him play very much. And fortunately, Conor only played that year, and he joined the rest. Another side note: the football coach was also the wrestling coach.
Got it.
And so Conor started doing the wrestling coach, and this coach is to this day a friend of mine.
Okay.
And
Was he a friend before then, or only?
No.
After that.
And Conor is the reason. Every time I see the guy, we talk about Conor. He's always asking me about Conor, because getting back to Conor as a 13-year-old freshman on the wrestling team, small kid, didn't win one meet, not even close. You would get pinned within
That's not true.
30 seconds.
I was good at not getting pinned. I was actually good at not getting
Okay,
pinned.
well then I'll
So
tell
you'd
you
lose on
the
points.
I would lose badly on points.
Okay.
The first time I went to watch Conor wrestle was the first meet, and it was against North Andover. Big,
That's a really good team.
really good program. Freshman wrestling happened at the end of everything else, and wrestling matches are long. So I think I was there for probably 4 hours.
Oh wow.
To the dedicated dad I am, I wanted to watch wrestle. He got pinned in 10 seconds.
North Andover, I did get pinned.
He got pinned right away.
Those kids
And-
have been playing since.
And so, but to Conor's credit, he liked wrestling enough, and I'll just give my own opinion on this. I think it gave him, it was a counteraction, or was related to being light and small, and to be able to self-defend himself. So he stuck with it. He went to every practice. He went to every meet. Like I said before, he didn't win anything, but the coach's name was Scott Conley, or is Scott Conley, and he presented every year a trophy called the Iron Man Trophy for anybody that came to every practice and went to every meet. And Conor got it. And the night we got it, the guy just commented on the dedication. Now, education was okay at the school, but it wasn't great. But I think that and then kind of continued doing wrestling the rest of the 4 years. I don't think he won a match until he was a junior. He lost everything as a sophomore too. But, and genetically, I also was a short, fat kid when I was 13 and 14, and my wife was freaking out, like we got a small kid, and she also has family problems with her brother was was stunted a little bit. And I said, look, give him a shot, because when he gets to be about 15 or 16, my guess is he's going to start taking off.
Is that what happened with you?
That's what happened with me. That's what happened with Conor. 14, in a junior year, he became a serious wrestler and got some medals and was a respectable wrestler.
Yeah, learning that Conor was small was surprising to me. It doesn't strike you as someone who was small growing up, right?
Well, because he's not
to me.
small anymore.
Yeah. Yeah.
No, he's
How
not.
tall are you now?
6 foot.
6 foot? Okay.
Yeah. No, he was definitely a small looking. I mean, we did Boy Scouts, and Conor as a Boy Scout was a challenge. It was definitely a challenge. Fortunately, we had, in my mind, a very progressive Boy Scout operation, but Conor did throw a couple of monkey wrenches in there, like getting kicked out of summer camp, along with other star Boy Scouts that weren't supposed to get thrown out.
So it wasn't just that Conor got kicked out. He
brought
took the other ones with him.
He brought the other ones. Now, this is kind of a cute story because to give you an idea of what it was like to raise Conor, I get a phone call. Conor's gotten kicked out from Hidden Valley. Come up and get him. What we did was I bought 2 or 3 bottles of wine, some bread and cheese, and we went camping for 2 days. And, I wasn't pissed off because it was the Boy Scouts. Right? I mean, and he didn't do anything nasty.
Sure.
He did throw a monkey wrench into the camp because I think you run away or
No, we cut down the antlers above the art studio and then lifted it up on the flagpole in the main area. And then when they came running after us, we ran.
and so by running and
It was
not going
by
back.
running, it was by
No. Let me. The thing that got everybody in a tizzy is because they ran, they didn't come back to the camp. They couldn't find them, so it meant like the whole camp had to go down lockdown,
Sure.
and everybody had to
This
go
was
start
also
looking
before.
for them.
Actually, a bunch of us turned ourselves in, and then, but then because we didn't have the full set, and the full set stayed hidden for another 2 hours, then we all got in as much trouble as the full set. But they knew who all of us were.
So did you just go off into the mountains and?
Just not into the.
They came back came
Sure.
back after 2 or 3 hours.
Yeah, it's not like. Crazy.
Yeah.
It's not like Utah. It's not like
Yeah,
mountains.
yeah.
Yeah, my
Ran
Boy
off
Scout
into-
camps were very different,
ran off
right?
into the forest.
Yeah. Okay.
And it was the middle of the night, and they're going to get hungry and cold.
Sure.
But yeah, so
I mean, after days.
I didn't. My wife and I didn't.
So yeah, you get kicked out. Not a huge deal, but like you can't do that
turned
and
the whole.
stay here. and-
From my point of view, I turned the opportunity to go up to the camp and get him as an opportunity for us to hang out a little bit, and I drank the wine. I wasn't. I think I gave him a sip or so too, but we just hung out and then we went back, and I think I had to go to a couple of Boy Scout meetings to defend it, and I'm not. Did you quit after that?
No, but I had been reliant on because the whole point of summer camp is you compress all your merit badges.
Right. You get all the merit badges then. So now it's like you're
I
so
was-
far
I was
behind.
not able to make it to Eagle. And they got especially pissed at me because I asked if I could get partials on my merit badges after getting kicked out of summer camp, and they were just insulted by this.
Well,
So-
Got
I
it.
think we can all say
because
that.
I was trying to still make Eagle.
Yeah,
Yeah.
but you, okay, as your dad, you weren't going to make it because you took so long to just get through second class, let alone first class, and then you got to do heart and whatever
I got
life.
to star. I got my to star, and I was most of the way through heart.
But you made it to star after you had quit for a year and a half, and put even my other son, who was kind of like the prototypical Eagle Scout, he didn't make Eagle Scout either.
My
and-
mom got my Eagle Scout, so we're
Well,
good.
that's usually what happens.
Yeah.
Is if you have a parent that's just on top of the guy.
0% chance I would have done it without my mom.
Yeah,
Like,
you
and my
Both
grand.
of my parents are pretty ADHD.
And so that's a very telling component because I'm backing off. I'm not doing it for you. I'll if you want to work on something, blah, 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 but I'm not doing this. And Kyle, I don't want to digress too much, but Kyle was like he was on an upswing to be an Eagle before he even aged out, right? When he first started, he was like nailing it. And then, as a 16-year-old male in this society, other things come into your life that
Yeah.
are more interesting.
Yeah, for sure.
And so,
Brother gets you drunk.
yeah. Those were two instances of what, and then fast forward a little bit. I mean, so Conor was all,
because that's like quasi rebellious, but it's not like
Right.
over any lines.
right, and that's exactly what I would say Conor was about. He was a little bit rebellious, but not on every lines, and he was always entertaining. In the way he would do it. He went through a goth phase,
I can see that.
and
See that.
the most brilliant expression of gothism I've ever seen was a Boston Red Sox hat with a bunch of spikes coming out of it. And it's still in our garage. It should be in the Sullivan museum. So then coming into what you guys know, as you know Conor more, he goes to, he went through the whole college thing, and he ends up at UMass Amherst. And the first time the first time I knew that Conor had something that I certainly didn't have, which is the ability to put a lot of coherent ideas together verbally, was when he talked in front of the school department, and when he was 14, because this is right around 9/11, they had canceled the exchange program to Germany, and he was scheduled to go to Germany, and he was understandably kind of pissed off that it wasn't happening. So he made a fairly eloquent defense about it. Didn't work, but fast forward to UMass. As a freshman, he sold soda pop, Sol Mate, which is some sort of herb that tastes like shit. They came in two flavors. Both of them were bad, but they were really popular with the cannabis rights people on campus. And Conor went down to this conference, comes back as the campus distributor of Sol Mate. So his dorm room was floor to ceiling with the cases of.
Was there a campus distributor program, or is that basically something you created? Like, hey, let me go sell this.
Oh no, it was totally out of his bedroom.
Yeah, come. Yeah, you need to give context here.
Yeah.
Here's how I lean it. All right. Okay. So the story for there was. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
We're good. So the story there was, I had gotten another kid who didn't go to the conference. Like there was a class that was going to this Natural Products Expo conference, and I started auditing the class, and but I think I hadn't even audited the class yet. I got connected to the teacher, and he was like, "Yeah, if you come down." So I went down, and my name was like Hussein Al Amari was like the name on the name tag, and but I just went to the trade floor, and yerba mate is this it's a Brazilian thing, and they had this energy drink, and it was a startup. I didn't really know about startups, let alone that you could have a startup beverage thing. And it was like three German guys in Canada that had just gotten like distribution through Whole Foods or something, and I spoke German because I did eventually get to go to Germany, but
Okay.
Only once instead of the two that was supposed to happen. But yeah, so I just like started chatting with the guy, and I was like, hey, you should let me like market this, and I'll do I'll figure out your marketing campaign and like all this stuff. And he was like, no. But I kept emailing with him, and he was like, okay, I guess if you we don't have we can't send you any of this stuff. So I was like, well, what if I rented a U-Haul truck and I went and picked it up from your distribution center? And he was like, fine, if you get a loading dock, we'll send you a truck full of these things. And so I never got paid by these guys. Like I made up a title for it, but they sent me like $2,000 worth of the drink. But then because I didn't have an EID number, I couldn't actually get it distributed on any of or employer identification number or any of these tax things. So I couldn't actually sell it wholesale to any of the local places. So I just ended up like selling it out of my dorm room for like $1 or $1.50 a bottle for cash. Yeah. And then I ended up, there's a brilliant barter economy where most of the income actually came from was like, but yeah, like my thinking was because it was both a stimulant and an appetite suppressant. that I was like, this will go over
perfect
well
for college.
especially for the weed people. So I went to the Cannabis Reform Coalition and gave a speech, and I was like, here, like, this is your drink. Like, we're going to, and that ended up leading to a bunch of people who were really into the drink. So, yeah.
And the reason I bring it up is that, as I was saying, watching Conor interact with other people.
Oh, the best part was convincing the UMass dining services
So we
to
go.
let me use their loading docks.
We
That
go-
was-
we
that
go-
took like a whole. I just read Dale Carnegie and I applied everything to Dale. I like literally
Right.
was textbook Dale Carnegie the entire.
So the university let you use the loading
No,
docks
no.
the
The
campus
loading
guy.
dock guy.
the campus directing.
Got it.
Yeah, the dining services director. Just was like, yeah. I'll
So
just
we
try to
were
blind
we
eye
were
when the
leaving
truck comes in.
the student.
And I got all my friends to help me unload it.
We're leaving. I was out there visiting, and we go to dinner at the student dining hall. And as we're leaving, Conor introduced me to the guy at the loading dock, and the guy just complimented Conor and said, he's really well mannered, and as a parent, that's what you want to hear about your kids. That they're interacting favorably and nicely with other human beings. So that was, and Sol Mate, those, I didn't know that story, what you just talked about. But it doesn't
Wow,
surprise-
for some reason, the
doesn't
guy
surprise
who
me.
controls the loading dock is a big fan. I don't know why.
Because it was it was the cannabis rights people, and we had Sol Mate in the house. It was terrible stuff. I did see it for sale once in Whole Foods, but not for very long.
Do you still drink it?
No, it's not
Yeah, we
around.
didn't make
You
it.
can't.
They didn't make it.
I mean mate in general.
No.
No.
That was the first time I started having sleep problems. Because I had just gotten a prescribed Adderall and I had an endless supply of energy drinks.
Yeah,
I realized
it's not
that
ideal.
vendors don't always produce the best sport.
Yeah.
So there are a lot of stories like that. Next one had to do with is pretty much the first startup, which was called Soapbox,
Mm-hmm.
It became local actually.
and which became Localocracy, and this whole anthropology thing was part of this whole Monty thing. But somewhere he got into this entrepreneurial program or group of people. He didn't go to business school. He didn't go to business school, but he got into this entrepreneurial group, and I met a bunch of them, and they were all pretty savvy people. They had pretty good ideas, a lot of ideas that I've seen come to fruition. But most of them had scientifically based ideas, like how to turn solar power into compost and run outhouses. And there was a competition to be able to go pitch your idea to a bunch of other former startup people or business people, and they would give awards for how good your operation was. And Conor's was the only kind of social media one that was up there, and he got like third or fourth prize or something like that. But I remember sitting there watching him do his elevator pitch and wondering what genetic where did this come from, because it didn't come from
That was
me.
definitely mom's.
And yeah, she is my mom. My wife is a debater, and she's a very eloquent speaker. So Conor, and this is really one of the first. Conor also did mock trial in high school. I sort of skipped that over. That was a number of really eye-popping experiences to watch him do mock trial, and the school did pretty good with mock trial. But then there just escalates from there, and all of the other stories are just. In the early 20s, it was just bizarre because the stories were just so bizarre. Selling a Localocracy and this Huffington Post business and all this other kind of. And then there are the stories of the motorcycle. They're just insane, but they're incredibly entertaining, and has made parenthood. Well, I had that opportunity to do it. Incredibly a fun thing to do. Yeah, so that's what it was like to be Conor's dad.
What did you think when he was doing, when he started, hey, I'm starting a company and it's going to be a tech company, and it eventually ends up getting bought. Was it by AOL that bought it? Or I guess HuffPo, which was owned by AOL, or I don't know.
Well, we had a lot of inklings that it wasn't a fly-by-night stupid idea.
Mm-hmm.
you had a guy at the Knight Foundation that I can't remember his name, but he was Conor had picked some mentors who had their ducks in a row.
Mm-hmm.
The Pointer Institute, Conor wasn't a journalist. They gave the local accuracy some sort of reward,
Mm-hmm.
and I remember listening to it on the computer, and they named local accuracy, but Conor was not a journalist,
Right.
so.
But there are real signal from
Totally.
serious institutions that
Totally,
it
totally.
wasn't a joke. Yeah.
So it wasn't hugely surprising to realize that it was going to get acquired, because we were kind of on that trajectory. So and then we kind of lost him because then he moved to New York and lived there with the Huffington Post operation, and that's pretty much when he came home after college and lived with us for a while, and then got a place in Dorchester for a little bit.
Did you graduate? You graduated, right? No. Okay.
But he came within a hair's breadth of graduating.
Uh-huh.
He attended the graduating ceremonies. We have pictures in our house with a cap and gown on.
You got a cap and gown. That's one hack. Yeah.
Yeah, I think it was because you didn't turn in your thesis.
Yeah. Does it bother you that he didn't graduate, or do you not care?
It bothered Mom for a
Me? Well, there are many times I say, would you just get the freaking thesis done? I mean, just you won't have to think about it more. But at this point, it doesn't matter.
Yeah.
Doesn't matter.
Oh, for sure. I mean,
I don't know if it meant more to Claire than it meant to me. From my point of view, I'm an architect, and it took me a long while to get licensed. And being licensed is much more important than having a college degree.
sure.
But, in my sensibilities, it was just a really good thing to get done. Right?
Sure.
Right. And
Knock
so
it out
I kind of
and-
felt the same way about college diploma at that point. If you've spent the last 4 years doing it, just do the freaking thesis and get it over with. But you can take the horse to the trough, but you can't make him drink. And so at one point you say, "Fuck it, if you don't want to do it, don't. Okay, I'm not going to do it."
Yeah. So then Conor is in New York. You have money a little bit, and you're just working at HuffPo, basically.
That's pretty much it. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
And then how do we get from there to what was the experience from there to Conor starting Rome and buying a compound in southern Utah and
Well, when he went to Huffington Post, and he had some money, it's Conor's life, right?
yeah.
So there weren't. I've often told Conor, I'm not going to give you advice unless you ask me for it. And so he's got money. He's 22 years old. Do with it what you want to do.
Yeah.
And he's better. He would tell you more about what he did. I know he traveled a lot. I don't even know when he started. When go through Rome. I know that we went through. At this point, we're looking at what mate is going to. What mate's he coming home with? So we went through various iterations of that. And then he went to India for a while, and so at that point you sort of you let your kids go,
Yeah.
and from both of my boys, it's not something that keeps me up at night because they're intelligent human beings, right? I'm not worried about them. I guess what I'm trying to
they'll
say.
figure it out.
Yeah.
Somehow.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So after HuffPost, after he left New York, it was, and I did pretty much the same thing. It's like, fuck it, I'm out of here. I don't know where I'm going, but I'm going someplace. And so, and I used to get a lot of grief from my wife about that because I would get, he's taking after you. He's just like you. He's doing this. And I'm thinking, okay,
Right.
that's not a problem for me.
Right.
And so getting to here, like I was saying before, you success just doesn't happen like that. You see someone work really hard at it. You see somebody dedicated to it. You see the little feelers are happening. And I'm not an entrepreneur.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not quite sure where that genetically happened either, because my wife's not an entrepreneur either. So that is really important because I'm learning about that mindset from my son. And like I said before, he was our first one. We had no criteria to base it on. I have no criteria to base on whether Conor's going to be successful or not, other than all the things I've told you about, and knowing him, he's my son that I've been able to watch grow up. So I had lots of confidence in it. But more importantly, I guess I had, and maybe I've never told this to you, just admiration for the tenacity and the willingness to stick to it. And he knew that was happening.
Yeah.
So we lived through, the days when he was living in a trailer. We didn't like it, or the pickup truck. But like I said, they're free to make their own decisions, as long as you have some confidence that they're going to be able to figure it out.
Yeah. And there's never like a concern, he's not going to be able to support himself in the long run. This was, at a maximum, it was a stage.
Of course there is.
Right?
Of course.
There was?
Yeah, of course. Yeah. I mean, you always, failure can really bend people seriously out of shape if you have to live with it for a long period of time.
Sure.
So, you worry about that, but, you have to have faith.
Yeah.
And, fortunately, everything I've been talking about for the last 10 minutes gives me a fair amount of faith in an individual that's going to somehow figure it out.
Mm-hmm.
But that concern about how your children turn out or what they do, I don't think that changes ever. Ever. I mean, I have a great deal of faith that Conor's going to be a good dad, but that weird things can happen.
Yeah.
Weird things can happen. Life is a very unpredictable thing. So you go into it with as much faith and love as you can.
Yeah. What did you think so after a while, Rome was up and running. I think Rome got profitable, after you launched it. Did it get profitable relatively quickly?
It took us a year to build the payment setup and other things. But we were making $1 million a year within a month of turning on payments.
And it was just you and Josh, and you're doing $1 million a year in revenue?
We just hired one person.
Okay. So, I mean...
So, yeah,
very profitable.
We got to... I spent all the money that I made at HuffPost, even though I was living.
So you're now... Yeah, you spent all your money, but now you turn on payments.
Well, and then we had 3 years after I spent all my money. So I went down to zero personally, and then we were there for 3 years, basically making $10K at a time, and then we're raising $10K, having to go 3 to 6 months, then again another $10K, go 3 to 6 months.
Got it. So you're raising little angel rounds here and there, live on that.
Just
not even round,
two friends will give me $200.
Yeah. Okay.
And we did that for 3 years, and then we launched, and then we were able to raise a little bit because we knew we'd be profitable as soon as we turned on payments because the numbers were there. And then we turned on payments, and
and you've been profitable since, basically.
Yeah.
And that's just grown.
Yeah.
And then, what was it like when you heard about the whole Utah business?
That's funny. Very funny. Because based on the way you just phrased that question, we were looking at college campuses in New England, and we were looking at ranches in Texas, and we had digested the concept, right? That
sure.
There was going to
so
be,
you know that Conor's going to go buy some piece of land somewhere and do something.
Well, he's always done this kind of Jintoist thing, which is getting people together to talk about things, right?
Sure.
And so it made sense to me, and I was excited about it because the whole notion of buying a small college in New England and fixing that up. And I'm also an architect, so I'm thinking, wow, this is something we may have potential work together.
Oh, this house must be interesting to be in as an architect.
I'm not a big fan of this house. I love hanging out here, but as an architecture piece, I'm not hugely appreciative of it. So the whole notion of this compound was understood, but the Utah thing came out of nowhere. I mean, suddenly it was like you go into radio silence with Conor for like a week and a half or 2 weeks or 3 weeks because we're thinking Texas. And my wife is a real estate agent, so when she gets this, she gets totally pumped, and she's like getting in contact with people in Texas.
So she's looking outside of Austin for
yeah. And selfishly, I'm looking at places that got streams on that, and I'm thinking horses, and this is awesome. And so this Utah thing comes along, and I'm seeing this. You've heard this. This is a McMansion, right? It's
very much so.
Yeah,
like
it's a
very, very
and
almost explicitly and admittedly a McMansion.
And I thought, fuck, this is not what I had in mind. And then I took a look at the pool and I said, wait a minute, this is starting to get kind of interesting. And I'm looking at it strictly as wow, this is really kind of. First of all, I understood that Rome was taking off, and that the ability to be able to do these kind of things was going to be there. So, if it was, you're just walking through and we're showing me the coat of arms and the swords here, and then what the fuck is this? But it was his stuff.
Sure.
But it was Utah, and I'm looking out the window, and as an Easterner, I'm just so pumped about being out in a place that looks at this stuff, and I do like the world, so I wanted to come out really badly and see it, and I'm thrilled about this area.
Is this your first time here?
No, I was out in May,
okay,
and it was not a great trip because there were too many other family members, and there was just way too much chemistry, but I was able to swim in the pool. Pool was nice, and I was able to go on a couple of hikes, and went to Zion, and it was nice enough for me to say, I want to come back on my own, and so that's why I'm here now.
Very cool.
Yeah, cool. Yeah, and and Conor was going through at that time that business was bizarre, so we really didn't see him very often.
Yeah.
Which didn't bother me as much as it bothered some other folks who came out, like my wife. She wanted to hang out with him.
Sure.
But I'll tell you something right now. I would definitely think that she should come out here for her birthday on her own. And so the Utah thing was bizarre, but if as you've been listening to me, bizarreness is not an unusual thing to.
You expect it at this point from Conor.
And I'm expecting more bizarre things to happen, which it just makes my life that much more interesting.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, selfishly speaking,
as a spectator, I'm
kind of surprised you haven't asked a question like, what's it like to suddenly see this success fall on your son?
Sure.
It's just great. It's just being able to share his success and help us be a little bit wealthier as a family.
Yeah, I was gonna say, and you're an investor in Rome, correct?
Yeah, but why not?
Sure.
I mean, the interesting thing about that question is, Conor. There were times when I said, "Should we invest?" and he would say, "No." Mm-hmm. But then he got on the phone one time and said, "Yeah, now it's time to do it." So and we just did it. We weren't sure if it was going to work.
Sure.
There's.
I'd be interested to hear from Conor. What point, like, was this after payments were turned on, or was this before? Like, what signal did you have to know that you would feel confident telling your parents to invest?
We were growing 40% week over week.
Okay, 40% week over week growth.
Or or month over month maybe, but like.
On what end was it?
On people using 4 or more days per week.
Oh wow.
And so I was not about to take their money when I thought it was at risk at all.
Right.
But then.
Because money to Silicon Valley people is very different than money to like.
I wouldn't take their money when we had none. I wouldn't take their money when we were really broke and no one would invest.
Right.
And I brought them in when we also raised a round of like $750K from other professional investors.
Sure.
And I was like, okay, you can roll into this because your money's going to be a lot safer.
This is real now. It's protected.
Now it is not a product market fit question.
Right.
This is definitely going to work. So come in now that it's a real round. Now you guys.
Right. Let me.
Well, because they had to dump their 401K a bunch. Right.
Oh
and
wow.
So it was. I only was willing to take their money when I was more confident in Rome than the entirety
Than
of the U.S. economy.
Anybody else was.
Well, no,
Oh,
than the economy. Because
sure.
I was not confident the economy was going to do well. I thought this was right when COVID was starting, and I was very worried that the U.S. economy was.
So net, you're gonna beat the S&P in Rome.
I'm going to beat. And I was also like, you're going to beat the S&P by a good amount.
By a lot.
And so on paper, it worked well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's really cool.
Yeah.
So the goal is the family goal. I've got Kyle lives in Chicago, and Conor has made it clear that he doesn't want to come back to the East Coast at all.
Well, that's not
Well,
totally sure.
that's maybe. This is what you've told me. This is where I'm at today. This is my goal, knowing what I know. Conor's staying out probably somewhere other than New England,
Mm-hmm.
and I love New England,
Mm-hmm.
and Kyle loves New England, and so I want Kyle to move back to New England, and have his kids in New England, and Conor have his kids wherever they are, and be able to split my time between those two. But I definitely, and that's my dream.
That's cool.
I'd be happy buying a double wide down in if he stays in here.
Mm-hmm.
I'll be happy to buy a double wide in Harrisburg or wherever the next time over, just to come out for a couple of weeks and look at what I'm looking at and walk.
I mean, right now it's not their bedrooms here.
Well, yeah, but
he
what,
likes the trailer.
Sure.
well, I also like my own space,
Sure,
right?
sure.
Am I,
You should talk about being a hermit.
Being a hermit.
We were talking last night about just COVID. COVID's somewhat responsible, but I'm not an exuberant person, right? I don't go out. Neither my wife and I pretty much like spending Saturday evenings watching TV and eating dinner in front of TV. We don't go to parties very often.
Mm-hmm.
So I guess that's kind of what the hermit is, because I'm not a super successful architect because I'm not a big schmoozer.
Mm-hmm.
What we're getting at is really the tolerance of petty talk, I guess.
No.
or
Let
bullshit.
me phrase this. I want to give you some credit. There. The realization I had last night when I was picking up from the airport was it sort of clicked with me that it is kind of weird that in his 20s or early 30s, at least as my mom tells it, he was sort of like the life of the party. He was a high school football player. When I was growing up, he would just read old books and do origami all the time. And his only friend was this really weird guy down the street who was they were like the Waldorf. Who were the two Muppets, the angry Muppet guys?
Oh.
Saster and Waldorf or whatever. Like they're
think
Marley
I
and
know who Marley is,
Marley and Marley from the Muppets.
Yeah.
But that's them watching the Patriots.
Yeah,
Like they're just
I'm not the kind of guy that goes. I don't play golf, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because I just spending 4 hours with somebody that I don't know just is not what I want to do, and I don't play poker with guys on a Saturday night. So I've been more interested in what happens in my house, and kudos to my wife. Claire is an incredibly entertaining, intelligent human being to hang out with. So
I mean, that's really cool. You just want to hang out with your wife, right? That's
I mean,
nothing wrong with
That's
that.
that really is, I think, the best answer to why I.
We also have a huge family. So
And when we get together, we do have a lot of family that we hang out with. Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah. So but I do. It's kind of funny you say when you go to a party, you are the life party. It still happens, and it surprises me because I'll go to this party that I don't really want to go to, and halfway in the middle of it, I've realized that, but fuck, everybody's talking to me, and I'm the one that's doing all the talking. And
Do you consider yourself an extrovert or an introvert?
Totally. I'm somewhere in between. I mean,
Okay.
I would say I'm more of an introvert than I am an extrovert because I don't go out to being an extrovert suggests that you're going there out, and I don't put myself out to get to know other
You don't
people.
seek it out, but when you're in that situation,
Yeah.
you're
I
comfortable.
mean, Connor's right. I'd be perfectly happy hanging out and doing whatever. I mean, there's a lot of funny little things. I consider myself a little bit of a toy maker when I'm not doing architecture. If you went up to my office, there's like wood ships over here. There's planes flying, hanging. There's rope work over here. There's a little origami over here. A couple of music boxes over there. So it's almost like a toy store. And I could have envisioned myself as just being a toy maker in another life. And
this guy's literally Santa Claus.
yeah, right. Totally. Yeah, and I would say Santa Claus is not an extrovert because he sneaks into the house and he leaves before anybody knows he's there, but he leaves a lot of good shit behind, and that's really what I like to do. Conor was asking me why I like doing origami or all these little things. It's to make people happy with with the kind of time economy I have. I can't spend a lot of time doing elaborate toys. So you make these funny little origami things, and you put them in a mail, and somebody calls up and says, "This is just thank you so much. It's kind of sweet," and that's incredibly rewarding.
That's cool.
That is cool. It is cool. It is cool. Yeah.
Very similar. I've realized surprisingly similar.
You mean you can sit at home and play with build software products and people appreciate it?
People love it, and I don't have to talk to them. I make a bunch of people happy without having to actually meet them.
That's interesting.
Yeah. And we can have an awkward conversation about how much it changed their life, and then I can be like, great.
The TED Talk was interesting.
What happened there?
He went to a Bruins game somehow, got some tickets to the Bruins game, and he met somebody, and he did his elevator. The elevator pitch is kind of cute. They're kind of fun stories. So he did the elevator pitch to this woman that said, "Okay, let's do the TED Talk." And the first time I heard TED Talk about TED Talks, I picked up Conor at UMass, and what I used to do is pick him up, and we would just go camping. We'd go further into Western Mass. But before we'd go camping, we'd usually stay at a cheap hotel. So we were staying at a cheap hotel, and he turns on the TED Talk on his computer, and he introduced me to this whole that had just started. And so when he came home and says, I'm going to be doing a TED Talk in Boston, I was really, really impressed. And then they picked him up in a freaking limousine. And that impressed me even more. And so then he went down and did this TED Talk, and it was interesting in his time in Boston because that's when he started messing with MIT and Harvard people. And we all, I've known Conor that he's always had the ability to be a student at MIT or at Harvard if he'd ever applied himself to. I'll tell you, a family story, a personal story. The first time he got like a D as a sophomore in school, I said, "Well, you can kiss MIT or Harvard goodbye," and I took so much shit from that from my wife.
It was like the most important statement he ever said, though, I think.
And it was 100% true.
Sure.
100% true. But
I turned it around after that.
Right. So the beauty of that time that he was in Boston and I went to this TED Talk. A couple of kids from MIT came up. I met them before I went in, and they had known you, and they were saying, they were just saying good things about you. And then the other funny story that I'll tell for you, was the literal elevator pitch that you did at Harvard, when now I probably have the story wrong, but I'll tell it from my point of view. He's probably some business oriented thing. They're giving an award for the best elevator pitch. And they go through all the Harvard students, and I think at the end they said, "Is there anybody else that wants to give it a shot?" And so Conor said, "Yeah, I'll give it a shot." And so he gets up and he wins, right? And he wins like $500. And he comes home and my wife, he was so happy. I think I was probably asleep, but Claire was still up, and he goes, "Mom, look at this. I did this." And to all of us, it was, and I think I'll speak for you, it was an affirmation that, you are of the same quality of intelligence that those people have, except they're in the institution. But, you're not in the institution. And I know that you would agree with me there. I'm glad you didn't get into the institution, because you would be part of the institution at that point. Do you know what Tinker Toys are?
They're like baby
Tinker Toys are what kids played with before Connects.
Okay.
So they're made of wood. They're little discs. You stick little posts in the side of the discs or in the middle of the discs, and you make these crazy things. And and this is where, like I say, like I'm a toy maker. I'm all over this kind of shit. So I was playing this stuff with Conor when he was pretty young, and he starts putting he'd do his invention time, and he would put it started out with Connects. It started out with Tinker Toys. It progressed to Connects. Was there another thing that we did? I think the Connects were the big
We
thing.
made big connections.
We made big Connects. Anyways, he's doing this invention kind of thing, and during the course of the conversation, I said, the MIT is a place where they really do a lot of inventing. And he goes, I really want to go to school there. I said, great. Why don't you write him a letter? And he's probably 6, 7, and he writes a letter to MIT.
Black crayon.
Yeah, it's like a kid's scrawl.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm not quite sure what happened to the letter.
They
sent it.
They sent me back a brochure.